Welcome in to the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio. To my left, Ira Schoffel. To my right, Gene Williams, Warchant.com. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's finally here, Florida State, Florida week. The rivalry, an all-time great rivalry, no matter what's happened in the two teams' prospective seasons. 12 o'clock gives you an idea what's happened in the two teams' prospective seasons. ESPN, of course, the channel. Let's start with a rundown of the latest. Florida State wins, going away 77-6 against Delaware State in a game that was virtually unwatchable. Now they go on the road with an opportunity to knock off Florida for the fifth consecutive time. That would be a heck of a run and something that's worth doing, especially because, for all intents and purposes, it means that Florida State will be bowl eligible if we're going to assume a win over ULM. The latest, Gene, with rumors regarding Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. We know this. Texas A&M is interested in Jimbo Fisher. What's the latest as to whether or not Jimbo Fisher would be interested in Texas A&M, and really the fans' perspective, I guess?
Well, the fans, if you go on Warchant's message boards, I don't know if you hear it, Jeff, but I mean, they just get annoyed. They're so sick and tired of the year after year after year, Jimbo Fisher to whoever, whether it's LSU or Georgia or Texas, and now it's Texas A&M. But you know what? He's not. Everyone wants him to come out and say, I have no interest. We don't know what A&M. We know, like you said, Jeff, he has some interest. What if A&M wants to be silly and, frankly, it'd be stupid, but let's say they throw him $8 million a year, guarantee him for 10 years. You got to take it, right? I mean, if they're going to be that stupid and do it, that's why he can't come out and say he has no interest until that goes through. I don't think he's going to leave. I think he believes he's staying. He's got what he wanted, I believe, out of the president. He has a good relationship there. So all things being equal, he probably stays, but you can't guarantee he's going to do that. And right now, that job at Texas A&M, there's still somebody sitting there. You can't come out and say, I'm not interested in a job that technically doesn't exist. That'd be very presumptuous on Fisher's side. So we still got to play this out, but I think about a week from now, we'll know how this is all going to play out.
Well, I think that's the right answer, too, if you're Coach Fisher, is to say, I don't speak about jobs that have not been offered to me or are not available, that are not open.
Yeah,
it's also just it's understood within the coaching community. It's a matter of respect. You don't do that. Would this be another ploy by his agent, Jimmy Sexton, to try to get more money out of Florida State or some other things that he might want?
On that topic, before I get to that, I do think that I understand where fans are coming from. They would like him to say, I'm not going anywhere. This is where I want to be. Don't ask me about any jobs but I know Gene's point is true that from Jimbo Fisher's perspective, you never know what's going to be offered. So I understand both sides of that. As far as what Jimmy Sexton, Jimbo Fisher's agent, the agent to practically every major college football coach in the country, what he might try to get out of this, I don't think there's much room for leverage this year. I just don't think this is a year, and I wrote about it on a column on the site at warchant.com this week. I just don't think that they're not going to push for more money. I mean, no matter what Texas A&M offers, I don't think Jimbo Fisher and his agent are going to come back and say, you need to match that or you need to give me some sort of raise after a 4-6 season. Especially, they could be a losing season if they don't win at Florida. I also don't think there's any other major big initiatives right now that they really want that FSU's fighting them on. He wants that football facility. The administration, John Thrasher, Stan Wilcox, everybody you talk to says that's going to happen. They want to get that project done. So I just don't think this is another situation. I think everybody's first reaction is, oh, Jimmy Sexton's going to hold us hostage again. I don't think that's the case. I think this is going to be a much smoother, much shorter deliberation. If Texas A&M offers, I think Jimbo's going to make a decision based on that offer.
Well, from the perspective of the fan base, when each of the last two seasons you've received a raise for your assistants, you've gotten what you've wanted. There is not a greater commitment than a university saying to a head coach, we're going to give you $40 million guaranteed. At some point, is that not enough to receive reciprocation from a head coach to the kind of loyalty that you've been shown by the university? A fan would say, well, what if we gave you $60 million guaranteed? At some point, would you at least deny that you're interested in another job? I get why people get...
There's always more money, Jeff. You see these things change. I mean, who knows what the bar is going to be 2 years from now? Could it be $10 million for a coach of his caliber?
A certain amount of guaranteed money to you and your family and your family's family and their family, you would think would earn some loyalty back.
Do you see it in pro sports at all?
I mean, guys pro sports, it's not the same as a university.
Why is it not from his perspective? Why is it not?
I think you're right from his perspective.
But I'm saying it would be nice, and in a perfect world, that's more enough money he could ever have and provide for his family and everybody else. But at the end of the day, that's just not how these things work, and that's not how most people see these things, whether it's a head football coach, whether it's a pro athlete, whoever. They're going to go for the almighty dollar. Now, I do think in this instance, if A&M offers them a little bit more like LSU did, I think those loyalty and those things do come into play. But the old adage, everybody has their price, and he does have a price. We don't know what that price point is, but it's there somewhere.
Yeah, he's not going to do what fans want him to do. That we can agree upon. And again, I think the easy way out for Jimbo Fisher is to, anytime he's asked, say, well, the job's not available. I don't comment on jobs that aren't available. The situation at Texas A&M is such that Kevin Sumlin is almost certainly gone, in part because he makes an awful lot of money and doesn't win enough. Let's just say it that way. But also because off the field, the stuff with the boosters and the alumni and the money guys that make the decisions, that relationship is fractured. I understand it from Kevin Sumlin's standpoint. If you want to get out of there with the things that he's had happen to him and his family in terms of letters and things that have been sent to him with threats and racist comments, you could understand why he would want to leave. That's almost certainly going to happen. And would that be a good fit for Jimbo Fisher if, in fact, he did leave?
I don't really know if it's going to be. One thing with Jimbo is I think doesn't like is all the meddling from boosters and administrators and people who feel entitled to be involved in that process. And he's going to get a lot more of that at A&M than he does at Florida State. So from that perspective, not a good fit. A good perspective from the fact he wants unlimited writing checks for whatever he wants, something. It's something every year. He may get that a little bit better at A&M. They've obviously got a little bit more money there. And I wonder about the timing of this thing, too. I think the last couple of years really wasn't good timing for him to leave. Not that it's good timing now, but he may be looking, going, wait a minute, things aren't going so well. I'm getting fans yelling at me. I don't have a good relationship with the media right now. Maybe he just figures, look, Miami's on the rise, Clemson's owning the conference, Georgia, who I recruit against, is doing real well now. Maybe the timing is good to kind of get out of here and go to greener pastures. So I think there's a higher chance at LSU, but I still think, again, I'll reiterate, at the end of the day, I think he's still at Florida State next season.
I do too, but what would be the reasons for him to leave and or stay?
I think Gene touched on them. I mean, I do think that from a standpoint of this, it's not as if the situation is different this time than the LSU situation. The last couple of years, Florida State was winning 10 games a year. They were closer to that 2013 national championship season. He was grooming a quarterback he thought could take over in DeAndre Francois that would kind of lead them. The defense was going to be loaded. Things were in place. Then you have a season like this, and I think it makes you reflect. I think it makes you wonder, okay, this wasn't just this wasn't just a season where you didn't meet expectations. This was a disaster of a season. At one point, you were 3-6. You lost your first 3 games at home. I mean, just things that are unheard of in Florida State football. So I think from that standpoint, he's got to have to reconcile that and decide, if I'm going to stay, how many coaches do I have to change? Who do I have to fire? What's it going to take to get the kind of culture back on track the way he wants it? Does he have a quarterback he believes in for next year? Whereas you go somewhere else, you get a fresh start. Those kids are going to buy in. They've been losing. They're going to be excited to hear a new message. So there are pros and cons to each side. As with Gene, I do think he'll end up staying, but I do think there's more at play here than there were the last couple of years.
Might be a difficult turnaround, but I think he's got to stay at Florida State. It's a better job than the Texas A&M job, and it has been historically, and it will be moving forward. He's gotten everything he's asked for. The administration is not saying no to the football facility, so it's going to take some time, but it's going to work out. And I think you don't want to leave on this note. He's too much of a competitor. He's got great pride. He's done great things here. I think he deserves the opportunity to turn it around. I think he'll get that opportunity, and he'll choose to take it and stay at Florida State. When we come back, well, Florida's already fired their coach. They're in the midst of a 4-6 season, too. We'll talk about the Florida Gators, the opponent next for Florida State, on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Florida State, Florida, an all-time great rivalry, not all-time great years for these two schools. Here's Jimbo Fisher talking about the 4-6 Gators.
Jim, I know their numbers aren't as good defensively, but do you see similar type athletes that you've always seen on that side of the ball?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they can run. They're physical. They can hit. I mean, Duke Dawson's been around forever. Brian is a heck of a player up front. Levin can, the linebacker tackles well. The corners are young and athletic. Let's see, C.C. Jefferson, C.C.'s been around. We recruited the heck out of him. He's a great player up front. I've had some guys injured, and, of course, we've had a couple guys suspended on some things, but they're athletic and can run and tackle. Offensively, good backs, good skill guys can run, and kicker and punter are tremendous. I mean, their punter kicks it a mile, and their kickoff guy is about an 85, 87%. Kick it out of the end zone, got great range on field goals, so they're good in all those phases.
That's Jimbo Fisher on the Florida offense. And, you look as a whole, this has been a tough year for Florida and Florida State. They're 109 and 110 in the country in total offense. Florida's passing 103rd. They've had different quarterbacks they've tried. In a nutshell, give me something on Florida's offense and why they've been so bad.
I mean, it all goes back to quarterback play. I mean, they just have not had a good quarterback since Will Grier got in trouble a few years ago, and they didn't have one for a little while before that. It's just been one thing after another for them on offense. The one thing they did have for a while was they kind of had a power running game. You could kind of count on that a little bit. And they run the ball decently this year. This team can run the ball a little bit. They're not committed to it. They don't have any identity. And then when they do pass, man, it's anybody's guess where it's going to go. They went with Franks, and they went back to Zaire, then they went back to Franks again. There's discord. You had players, I think Franks apparently complained to the coaches about how much better he is than Zaire. I don't think they like each other. Zaire has tweeted on social media early in the year complaining about his situation. So it's just a bad situation. And again, there have been times in the past where they could hang their head on the running game. And I think they've got a couple of running backs that you like, but just that they haven't been committed to it. They just haven't been good at anything.
Felipe Franks does appear to be the guy now, Gene, and there's a guy I think that probably moving forward they have to try to really see if he can play or not. I understand why they've gone to him. Your thoughts on what he brings to the Gator offense?
I'm not going to tell you he's a good quarterback, but I think he's starting, like you said, settle in. He actually played the last game against UAB without a turnover. So, I mean, there's a big positive for Florida Gators. I'll tell you the one thing he does do really well, he's got a really strong arm. He can chuck that ball down the field. Now, they're usually good for about one play down the field where he runs around, buys a little time, chucks the ball 50 yards down the field. So that's got to be a concern for FSU because what do we see every game from FSU's defense? There's one or two plays where somebody's running wide open down the side of the field. So you got to wonder, will he be able to have a big play or two on that because he's got unlimited arm range in this one. So those defensive backs have to hold that protection or that coverage a long way down the field, or he will beat you that way. Now, he's not going to, he only completes a little over 50% of his passes. He's not going to complete a whole lot, but watch out for the deep ball.
Well, we talk about how bad Florida's offense has been for some time now, whether it be under Will Muschamp or Jim McElwain. And obviously the one thing they did do under Will Muschamp was play great defense. And you saw a lot of those players leave now, Ira, and the drop-off is fairly obvious. Florida's defense isn't the dregs of the world, but it's not great.
No, and you nailed it. And we talked about this last year. We thought this would be a concern for Jim McElwain, and it turned out to be true. He lost his job. Once those guys, Will Muschamp recruited at an extremely high level. They had great defensive backs, Vernon Hargraves and those kinds of guys, some great defensive linemen. And once those guys moved on, McElwain did not keep up that recruiting level that Muschamp did in the player development. And once the defense became kind of average, and with an offense as bad as they are, everything kind of imploded. So they're not terrible on defense, like you said. Florida State recruited C.C. Jefferson. They recruited a lot of these guys on defense. They're not a great defense. They're a pretty average defense, and they play really poorly on the road. It looks like they kind of fold on the road. At home, they've been a little bit better, but it's not the defenses. If you didn't watch Florida play this year, this is not the Florida defense of the last couple of years.
Well, they had Herculean performances under Will Muschamp. It was the only reason they were ever in games, week in and week out. They would hold themselves accountable and play great. But also, I think they get worn down when the offense being bad. We've seen that with our defense here, but it is still the strength of Florida's team is this defense.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of turnovers. That'll wear down any defense. But, I mean, the things that they do well, the one thing that I think really concerns you if you're Florida State is they do have a lot of ball hawks in that secondary. They have 13 picks in 10 games. We've seen James Blackman. He has a tendency to throw the ball where he shouldn't a lot of times. In a game like this, that's the one thing you worry about from Florida State. Because I think all things being equal, I think FSU's offense with the running game's a little better. The defense has performed a little better consistently than Florida. But that turnover, the great equalizer, you worry about that too. Another thing, and to steal from Ira's column on Warchant this week when he talked about Florida, they've actually been pretty good against the run, especially at home, only giving up about 106 yards a game on the ground, about 3.4 yards per carry. On the road, it's ridiculous. They're giving up 200 and almost 15 yards a game, over 5 yards a carry on the road. So they've actually been pretty good at home against the run, but obviously that's something Florida State needs to establish with Cam Akers and Jock Patrick. So they do still are pretty decent on defense, especially in those two areas.
When we come back, we'll discuss, I can't speak. When we come back, we'll discuss the DeAndre Francois situation as well as give you our keys to the game and make our picks on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. DeAndre Francois chose not to be in attendance for the game against Delaware State. I'll give you the details and the info where you can watch the games on the Warchant.com page in a moment, or I just did. But DeAndre Francois not at the game. Big deal or not?
No, I think it is a big deal because, if it's your backup lineman, nobody cares. But I mean, he's supposed to be, you're a quarterback, you're supposed to be a team leader. And when you're a team leader, you have to be there supporting your teammates, especially when the guy in your position that took over your job is a true freshman and he's struggling, even if you don't like the guy, even if you don't feel like you're a mentor, you need to at least show that you can look like, at least for appearances, you're a mentor. And then to make it worse, to go on Snapchat or whatever that was during the game. It's not like you took some time off to spend with your family. It looks like you're just goofing off, not paying attention at all. So it is very bad for optics, in my opinion. I think it doesn't bode well for the future, because we've heard little things. Maybe he's not the leader that he should be, and then this just adds to that. And you wonder, going into next season, does that make the quarterback situation pretty shaky for Florida State?
Well, he's hanging out with a guy that's suspended, and moreover, he's had some trouble on social media, which he probably should just stay off at this point, because he's retweeted some things that didn't show unwavering support for James Blackman. You can question leadership with a move like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear DeAndre Francois feels like he's going to do what he wants to do. And I think what bothered a lot of fans this week was not just the fact that DeAndre Francois didn't come to the game and support his teammates on senior day, but the fact that Jimbo Fisher basically just said it's optional whether they come. And that's hard for fans to reconcile. They feel like these guys are having a golden opportunity. This is an opportunity once in your life to represent this university, even though he couldn't play, to be part of his teammates. And like Gene said, it's not unprecedented. They have had players in the past. Mario Edwards, when he was a true freshman, I remember he was frustrated that he wasn't going to play, so he just didn't want to be down on the sideline. He couldn't, apparently what they said is he just didn't want to be on the sideline if he couldn't play. So there have been times like that in the past, but it's different when you're the quarterback. If you're the guy that's supposed to be a team leader, it's a bad look. And I think Jimbo not seemingly being concerned about it is another curious thing. And again, I think one more thing in this crazy season that has fans kind of scratching their heads.
My guess is he's very concerned about it. My guess is he doesn't think that it's just okay that his potential starting quarterback decided not to support his teammates on senior day and be there to support them after all that they've given, the blood, sweat, and tears. It's a terrible look. It's an awful show of leadership or lack thereof. And I think that if he wasn't so sick of talking to the media, Jimbo Fisher would have expounded further on this, but he wasn't going to give us anything at this point. Keys to victory, guys. Let's go. What do you got, Gene?
I said it over turnovers. I think you beat Florida as long as you don't turn the ball over, so that's obviously key. And I think get that running game established. I think last time down there, what happened? Dalvin Cook, 183 yards. You own the game. I don't know if you're going to have that kind of performance, but if you get, let's say, 150-plus yards down there, I think that takes pressure off of Blackman, controls the line of scrimmage, gives you field position, establish that run. That's a big plus.
Got to help your young quarterback out. He's been prone to the turnover. Florida gets some of that. Crowd gets into it. Could be a very difficult place to play. I'm with you. You got to run the ball, take the pressure off him, give Cam Akers, who's arguably the best player on the field Saturday, the ball.
Yeah, I do think the challenge is going to be Florida's going to stack the box, and they're going to make James Blackman make some plays like Clemson did, and he's just going to have to hit some throws. I mean, he cannot have a first half against Florida the way he did against Clemson. FSU was lucky to get back in that game. Jimbo Fisher took a huge risk in the second half, dropping him back so many times to make passes and try to get back in the game. It could have gone sideways. It didn't. They got a couple pass interference calls. They hit the trick play. They got back in the game. That can't happen every time. James Blackman's going to have to. Jimbo's got to help him out from a play calling standpoint. The receivers and the offensive line have to help him out, but he's going to have to hit a couple throws. If they just depend on Cam Akers and Jaquez Patrick winning this game by running it 50 times, I don't think Florida State's going to win this game.
And now time for our weekly picks. I did not fare well last week, just 2-5. That's awful, not getting it done. Ira, nice job at 4-3. Gene, again, sub 500, 3-4. I say again, I'm just messing with you. All right, Virginia Tech's giving 7 at Virginia. Give me Virginia plus 7.
I'm with you. It looks like Tech is kind of fading a little bit. Virginia's playing some pretty decent ball right now. Hung with Miami there for quite a while until things kind of faded there in the fourth. But, yeah, I like them.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to take the 7.
Yeah, kid's got to stop throwing pick sixes, though, for Virginia. That cost him dearly in that game against Miami. Speaking of Miami, minus 14 at Pitt. Pitt's playing much better now. I took them last week against Virginia Tech in the other pool that I'm in. But I don't think they're good enough to hang around for 4 quarters. I'll take Miami, given the 14.
I still feel like maybe fading Miami a little bit. I've gone back
I do
and
every
forth,
week,
and then I've gone back and forth on this spot. I mean, I just think that, I'm going to take Pitt. I'm going to go ahead and take Pitt.
I'm going to take Pitt.
I'm with you. I'm hoping for a snowy afternoon up there.
Well, that changes things.
That might help a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, looking ahead, obviously, to the biggest game they've had in 15 years, the game coming up at Clemson for the ACC championship. So, I think that's a little bit of a look ahead. Maybe they played so well, it's time for a letdown if they're going to be. But like I've been burned lately picking against Miami, but I'm going to do it one more time.
I took Virginia in the points down there. 19 was a lot, and it ended up being close. But man, I don't know, 14, 2 touchdowns. That may be a push. Ohio State minus 11.5 against Michigan. Gene.
I don't know. Ohio State is this. I think I'm wrong every time I pick because they're either blowing somebody out, getting blown out. So I don't know. You know what? I want Ohio State to lose, so I'll just go ahead and pick Ohio State. So that'll probably help me.
I'm going to take Ohio State. And I'll give them the 11.5. Michigan's quarterback injury last week really hurt him against Wisconsin. I think they would have covered had he not gone down. Not that he's great, but I'll take Ohio State.
I like Gene's reasoning. I'm going to go against Urban Meyer because I don't like him.
Okay, I like that. Georgia's given 11 to Georgia Tech. Look out.
Man, I don't know. This is a little at 11 points. I'll go ahead and go with Georgia Tech on this one. I think Georgia's going to win the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if that triple option gives you fits. You got a big game obviously coming up against either Alabama or Auburn the following week. A little look ahead there. So, yeah, go ahead. I like that 11 points.
I'll take Georgia. I'll give the 11. Duke shutting down the Georgia Tech option last week.
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia as well.
All right, here we go. We go with Clemson minus 14 at South Carolina. South Carolina can't stop the run. Clemson runs the ball. Give me Clemson minus 14.
I'm with you there. I think they played their best. They struggled against Florida. They should have beat Florida. They should have blown them out. But the fact that Florida was able to be close with South Carolina tells me they're not that great of a team. So yeah, I'm with you with Clemson.
It's a rivalry game, boys. You got to throw out the records. But no, I'm gonna go ahead and take Clemson again. I'll lay the points.
This is a war. Alabama to Auburn. Give me Auburn plus 4.
I tell you the reason why not, because you know what? 2 huge injuries for Alabama in that FSU game. Now they're saying both of those linebackers could be back for this game. So that is huge for Alabama to be able to do that. And I think they're not going to, after there's still that pick six, the kick six still burns in them. I think they're going to come out fired up. Give me Bama.
Yeah, I'm going to take Alabama as well.
I like Auburn. I don't think Alabama has a quarterback. All right, so now we get to the good one. FSU minus 5, the good one. We have to do the points. I'm going to take Florida plus 5.
I tell you the one thing, because of what they went to those 10-minute quarters, you realize FSU doesn't technically get the cover last week.
They don't?
They do not. If you bet in Vegas, you don't get that. When they change the quarters, they throw the game out.
That's
so
brutal.
You don't. So FSU is technically not covered all season. I'm going to say again, FSU they win, but they don't cover. I've got 17-13 Florida State.
You're hilarious. I had 17-14.
I'm in the same, but I'm going to say 17-16. I think is what we talked about.
17, they're definitely scoring.
I think it's the race is to 17, maybe 20. But I would definitely hit the under if I was interested in such things.
For Ryan Kelly, Ira Schoffel, Gene Williams, I'm Jeff Cameron. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Go Noles, and we'll talk to you next time.